In the second half of November 1942, Germans are caught in a confusing world where their collective hatred is killing millions of some people while they suddenly discover compassion for others. This is War Against Humanity, a series of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. In early November, more and more Jews were deported from the Netherlands, while some Dutch began hiding the victims of the Gestapo and their collaborators. In East Asia, the murderous mistreatment by the Japanese of POW and civilians continued. The collapse of Vichy France and German occupation led to increasing oppression in France, while silent protest and passive resistance was on the rise across the lands. In late November 1942, it is active resistance in Greece that makes headway. In the night of November 25th, a unit of 12 British Commonwealth agents, 86 Greek communists, and 52 Republican guerrilla descend on 2 Italian outposts guarding the Gorgopotamos viaduct. This bridge carries the railroad connecting Athens to Thessaloniki in the north. Destroying it would disrupt transports to a more distant Italian garrison camp and perhaps more significantly interrupt this path for access supplies from Greece to Egypt. With the guards distracted and communication lines cut, British sappers scale the viaduct and plant their plastic explosive charges. 2.5 hours after the attack begins, the first series of explosions rip into the bridge and heavily damages the construction. The sappers go back to attach charges to a second pier and detonate them an hour later. By 4:30 a.m., the British-Greek forces withdraw with minimal casualties. This is the biggest joint operation between the Special Operations Executive and local irregulars so far in the war. It is part of a new effort by the Allies to take the fight against the Axis to within occupied territory by actively working with partisans and guerrilla warrior, one that comes with some challenges. The larger group is from the Greek People's Liberation Army, Hellas, the paramilitary organization of the Communist National Liberation Front, IA. They are led by Aris Velochiotis, a convinced Marxist who joined the Greek Communist Party when he was 19. After the Hellenic army was beaten by the Axis powers, Aris fled into the mountains, where he gathered a band of guerrilla fighters. Ideologically opposed to the British Empire, he was surprised when in September this year, British Lieutenant Colonel Edmund Myers dropped into Greece by parachute and sought out his help. Myers is the commanding officer of the 12th Commonwealth SOE agents. He enlists the help of the communists, but also of the much smaller National Republican Greek League, EDES, led by Napoleon Tservas. The operation codenamed Harling is an operative success, but the strategic impact is limited at best. Rommel has already been beaten by the British at El Alamein, and the center of the African campaign has shifted away from Egypt. Last but not least, the railway bridge is repaired and fully operational in only 19 days. Yet, the operation will have lasting effects on the war. While the SOE agents were supposed to get out of Greece after the operation, they are ordered to stay. They will continue to aid the Greek irregular war effort, which because of Operation Harling begins to grow into a nationwide armed rebellion. For this to work, the irregulars must set aside ideological differences just like the Allies have in the greater scope of things. So Myers' role is also to serve as a moderator in the power struggle between Hellas and EDES, which is seen as inevitable. This is all part of a concerted effort by the United Nations allies to seed the war behind the front lines. Like in Greece, they face a problematic task to consolidate ideologically opposed insurrection forces. Sometimes it's even unclear what side the insurrectionists are on. This is especially true in occupied Yugoslavia. That the Croat NDH forces are on the Axis side is clear. It remains unclear if the mainly Serb Chetniks are fighting for or against the Axis, while it is clear that they are fighting the Croat Ustaše and the communist partisans. They in turn are clearly fighting the Axis, but also the Chetniks. To work out what to do, the SOE has infiltrated both the Chetnik and partisan movements and are gathering intelligence both about the Axis occupiers and potential insurrectionists. Now in November, with the recent attacks and the aftermath of the Prozor campaign by Chetnik forces on partisans and Croat and Muslim civilians, they tentatively conclude that the partisans is the preferable ally and will increase their material support to Josip Broz Tito's communist forces. In the occupied Soviet Union, the partisans are also receiving increased military support. The partisans there are now subject to standard disciplinary rules of the Red Army, have Red Army equipment, and are under effective Moscow control. This creates a real legal problem. Under the laws of war, these forces are not protected by the conventions of The Hague and Geneva. Their situation in this war will give rise to a debate about the legality of insurrections that by 2021 is still not concluded. That they are not protected by these conventions doesn't mean that they can be treated in whatever way their enemies see fit, though. They are still subject to and under protection of civilian laws in the territory they are active in. Furthermore, it is a war crime to carry out reprisals against civilians. Neither of the two matters to the Axis occupiers. In early October, we saw how the German occupiers and collaborating Greek police started a massive manhunt for the members of the Peian, a small Greek resistance group, after they bombed the offices of a Nazi collaborationist organization, ESPO. That search now comes to an end when Peian member and gendarme Polikarpos Delianis turns out to be a double agent and rats out his supposed comrades to the Nazis. On November 11, 13 resistance members are arrested. The police take them to prison for interrogation and, inevitably, torture. They reveal nothing. Eventually, they will be put on extrajudicial trial, found guilty, and face a variety of fates. Only 2 of them will live to see the end of the war. Delianis receives a large sum of cash for his information, but he won't get to enjoy it for long. On December 17th, he will be lured to a safe house by other resistance fighters where he will be killed with a sledgehammer. Retaliations against civilians by the Axis have, as we have seen, become commonplace in both Asia and in Europe. In Europe, the worst situation is for the citizens of occupied USSR and Poland. In Belarus, Erich von den Bach-Zelewski is now the only remaining higher SS and police commander. This month, he coordinates the forces under him into a Kampfgruppe, or battle group, under the leadership of Kurt von Gottberg. His newly arrived forces now subsume the SS Special Commando Dielerwange and the men previously led by Friedrich Jekyll, who led the massacre at Babi Yar last year. The men have received daily kill quotas. Fighting the partisans is virtually impossible, so the quotas are achieved by surrounding any random village and shooting or burning its inhabitants. Almost always in an orgy of rape and torture to complete the terror. Under the improved coordination of von Gottberg, the new Kampfgruppe now begin to kill an average of 100 people a day, every day, non-stop, almost all of them non-combatant civilians. While conflict increases between the occupier and the occupied, the Nazis are troubled that inside the German Reich, Germans are showing signs of humanity. If you've watched my episode about the neurology of hate, you will have seen how easy it is to get rid of the basis for thinking of other groups of people as something awful. All it takes is to get confronted with their humanity, and we are quick to reassess precognitions and misconceptions about others. Remarkably, this leads to a neural response beyond our control, where we suddenly incorporate individuals that we only just now had considered as them into our concept of us. Although these neurological responses are not known scientifically in 1942, the Nazis have implemented policies that promote hatred within the exact framework. Specifically, the segregation and isolation of the Jews has been central to increase anti-Semitism. With the Jews out of social and emotional reach, the Nazis have been able to dehumanize them and solidify pre-existing perceptions of us and them. Now, in November 1942, it looks like they have managed to do the exact opposite with Slavs and the Western Allied enemies. You see, The massive employment of forced labor, slavery, into the German economy has brought foreigners right into the daily lives of almost all Germans. And lo and behold, when working hand in hand with whom they've been told are the scum of the earth, many Germans now realize that maybe all the awful things they have been told about the filthy Slavs, the hateful French, and the bloody Brits isn't quite the truth. Now, as awful as the slavery system is, and it is awful, it's not mainly a system of closed slave camps. Both imported forced laborers and POW are fairly integrated into German society. Many end up on German farms where they work and live together with their German hosts. The farmers are expected to fully integrate the farm workers in their business while at the same time segregating them socially. In practice, this means that German farmers are ought to arrange separate living and sleeping quarters, and that it is strictly forbidden for slave workers to eat at the table with a German family. But many Germans can't or won't comply. Not only is it hugely impractical, time-consuming, and expensive to arrange for all these extra measures, it also goes against their nature to not treat their farmhands like family. That's especially true with Catholic Germans receiving Polish or French workers and POW who are culturally more alike than they had probably expected. The SS complains that the Germans are even often impressed with the work ethics, diligence, and zeal of their slaves. And like that, the constructed image of Slavic Untermenschen is nullified by simple interaction. Many Germans start to see them for what they are, fellow humans. Like humans do, they share, sympathize, become friends, and even fall in love. One should probably not be surprised that congregating millions of forced laborers in their sexual prime will not only lead to the production of more flour and grenades. The Nazis are surprised and not pleased at all, neither about the brotherhood of nations they have inadvertently given birth to, nor about the sex. In their November situation report for the Reich, the SS notes, "In a camp where Polish women, Belgians, and Flemish are kept, it will often have come to sexual intercourse between Flemish men and Polish women, whereby the Flemish even bragged openly and brazenly that sex with Poles is not forbidden. This example shows how essential it is to maintain strict segregation of workers of the same and different origin." Fears that go beyond the international sex between slaves. On December 7, 1942, Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler will once again order his subordinates to punish unauthorized sexual intercourse which threaten the ethnic entity of the German people with death. But just like the efforts of teenage parents to stop their offspring from fornicating, so will Himmler's efforts go. People, especially young people, will have sex, however much you forbid it, even when it's punishable by death. While the Nazis have failed to rob their slaves of their humanity, their own death squads have long taken leave of any humanity they may have had. By the end of the month, the death toll of the Holocaust surpasses 3 million, the vast majority Polish citizens of Jewish ethnicity. In Poland, which included what is today parts of Czechia, Slovakia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania, there were 3,474,000 Jewish-Polish citizens. A few 100,000 have fled. Between 100 and 200,000 were forcefully deported to Siberia during Soviet occupation in 1940 and 41, and most of the rest are dead. A report from the German Statistics Office in December calculates that there are only 297,914 Jews left in occupied Poland, the Generalgouvernement. 37,000 in the Krakow district, 29,400 in the Radom district, 20,000 in the Lublin district, 50,000 in the Warsaw Ghetto, and 161,514 in the Lvov district. But as we have noted, there has been a decrease of the murder rate since November 4th. The main reason is not that most Jews the Nazis initially targeted are already dead. There are still between 4 and 5 million Jews in Axis-controlled territory. They are spared for now because they have a part to play in the Nazi economy. On November 10th, the chief of police and the SS order forces of the Generalgouvernement in occupied Poland, Friedrich Krüger, issues an order listing 54 ghettos where Jewish workers will remain until further notice. But Heinrich Himmler stresses that their prolonged survival will be temporary. In accordance with the wish of the Führer, the Jews should someday disappear. All of us could have been complicit in atrocities like these under the wrong circumstances. All it takes is to be lazy, to let our fears dominate us, making us susceptible to ideas of division that feed alienation, which gives rise to hatred. None of us are immune to that. At the same time, all of us are capable of compassion. We're even incapable to not feel compassion. All it takes is to look into another human being's eyes and realize that they too, regardless of what they look like, what they believe, which language they speak, and who they are, see the world from the same perspective as we do, from inside humanity. To love is easier than to hate. To sympathize takes less effort than to antagonize. The conclusion of that is devastating. Yes, it was the German Nazis, the Japanese imperialists, and their collaborators who murdered them. Yes, it was the majority of Germans and Japanese people who were passively complicit in their murder. But that was not enough to allow for this massive death toll. It required the rest of the world to not resist, at least to not resist early enough. It required our species to collectively allow this to happen. We, as humanity, made an effort to kill them. Never forget.